is the theme to the show. The show is all about you. Not you, but you and your story. Because everybody has a story with Jeff Seltzer. Everybody has a story with Jeff Seltzer. Brought to you by JeffSeltzer.com.
Hello and welcome to Everybody has a Story with Jeff Seltzer. I am your host, Jeff Seltzer, and this is the 45th episode of my midlife crisis. Really excited to be here as always. We are a few weeks away from the 1-year anniversary. Really excited. Can't believe it's been a year that we've been doing this already. Those of you that have been listening and watching since the very beginning, I really appreciate you coming on this journey with me as we've learned a lot about myself, a lot about my friends, my guests, and met a lot of friends along the way. For those of you that are still new, really appreciate it. Appreciate you joining and finding and following the show. What I say to everybody is we're 45 episodes in now, but don't feel that you have to go to episode 1 and watch it through or listen to it through. Just look for topics that you like, right? We've done lots of different unique topics, from Disney World to immigrating to the United States to trying new things as you get older. Lots of different things. Find a topic you like, listen to it. If you like it, fantastic. If not, try a different episode. If you don't like any of those, then maybe just listen to another episode of another show. I don't know. Whatever it is, want to remind everybody that this show can be found on Instagram at Everybody Has a Story Pod. My personal Instagram is at Seltzer77. For all things Jeff Seltzer, you can always check me out over at JeffSeltzer.com. The TikTok for the show, which is still only a few weeks old, but has some really cool content on it, is at Everybody Has a Story Pod. You can email the show directly at everybodysastorypod@gmail.com. And just a reminder that we are available on all podcast platforms. We are video on YouTube and Spotify. YouTube is at Everybody Has a Story Pod. We're also audio on pretty much every podcast platform you can think of. So whether it be Amazon, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Apple, you name it, it's probably there. If you name it and it's not there, let me know, and I'll do everything I can to get it put up there. A couple of things I want to talk about before I bring in my awesome guest for this week. So every week, I generally get a lot of random solicitations. As a podcast, the show starts off, I talk about my email address, and so random people can email and say, hey, this, hey, that. Obviously, there's a lot of companies that also send information trying to sell me. Now, I'm a data dork. I love data. I'm a data geek just at heart. Professionally, my real world job, I work in data. And so obviously, in my free time, I also work in data. So anytime that I do get data, I don't know if it's true or not, I do like to look at it and overthink it because that's just what I do. So over the last few weeks, I've gotten a lot of different things in terms of data sources and in terms of where this podcast ranks. So a reminder to everybody, as of this week from Apple Podcasts, we are the number 44th podcast ranked when it comes to food courts. So if you want to know about your local Sparrow, about your local Charlie's cheesesteaks, about anything like that, look for 43 other podcasts, and then you can come to me and hear everything else, I guess. In terms of business inquiries, we are number 61. I don't really believe that, but that's what they say that I am. In terms of DIY projects, number 82. I think that's because one of my earlier episodes with Stephanie Romano was about DIY projects. Those people who know anything about me knows that I'm not Mr. DIY. I am Mr. Pay to get it done, so that's definitely not my specialty there. From a Spotify ranking perspective, we are number 40 when it comes to the future of wrestling. I guess. I mean, I talk wrestling. I'm not sure if I talk about the future of wrestling, but I guess that could make sense. Disney Experiences 91 and Disney Music is number 165. I do talk Disney a lot, but there are a lot of Disney niche podcasts out there. So I guess falling in the top 200 or so, I think that checks. It makes total sense. We'll see. I do have a theory, though, a running theory, that the more times I say certain keywords or things, because the podcast is transcribed, that I end up on the list of various searches. So the more times that I bring up the fact that I'm ranked as a food court podcast, I probably move up higher and higher in the rankings. If I talk about, I don't know, cups, or if I talk about wallets, what if I talked about, I don't know, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? Will I all of a sudden trend for that? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. We'll see in a couple of weeks if any of these random data sources start emailing me again and saying, hey, you're the number 37 podcast when it comes to, I don't know, flashlights. Anything's possible, I guess, at this point. It is what it is. Last thing I wanted to bring up before I bring in my guest for this week is recently I've watched a lot of, let's say, niche or different types of comedy shows and movies. A few weeks ago, I saw the brand new movie starring Paul Rudd and Tim Robinson called Friendship. Really awesome movie. Definitely a little bit out there. It's almost like I Love You Man, but kind of like a horror version of it. For those of you that don't know, Tim Robinson is the star of Everybody. No, not Everybody. That's my podcast. Of I Think You Should Leave Now on Netflix, which is a fantastic show, but it's obviously not for everybody. Very weird and kind of like just different kind of comedy. Very awkward type comedy. So between that and the fact that I've been watching a lot of The Rehearsal, a TV series on HBO Max is fantastic. I've tried to explain to my wife what The Rehearsal is about, and I failed miserably every single time because it's just very, very out there. Like I try to explain, like, look, imagine in life you have lots of situations that you live through or that you want to, be prepared for. Myself, because I'm probably a little bit out there and because my anxiety, I will overthink everything. And even this podcast, like I'll pre-produce 84 versions of this episode before the episode actually happens. I think like, what if this happens? What if that happens? I kind of talk through it. But what Nathan Fielder does, who he's absolutely amazing in the show The Rehearsal, is he legitimately brings in like actors and creates sets of things. So like this season, for example, he was trying to do some investigation into the communication between airline pilots. So he legitimately had HBO build like an airline terminal, like in a warehouse. So that way he can try to get himself or other airline pilots as prepared as possible for what he was trying to do. Like it's bizarre and it's out there. It shouldn't make any sense, but it absolutely does. It's also something you really can't watch, let's say, out of context or out of order, but it's an amazing show. So if you're looking for something new to watch, I would say on HBO Max, either season 1 or 2 of The Rehearsal. Nathan For You, another great show starring Nathan Fielder, is on HBO Max and I think Paramount Plus. And as mentioned before, Tim Robinson on Netflix, I Think You Should Leave, as well as Friendship, which by the time this episode drops might be on streaming. So definitely worth checking out. Also, if you like Paul Rudd, really, really a fun movie and just kind of seeing him a little bit out there as well. It's not Ant-Man, I'll tell you that. With that said, I did want to bring in my guest for this week, Ray Sanchez. He is a podcaster. He is a wrestling commentator. He's an all-around amazing guy. Ray, thank you for joining.
No, thank you, man. And I guess prepare to be in the arts and crafts section because I'm going to mention the word craft a lot during this episode.
I mean, respect as well. I mean, if somebody wants to drop the word respect because your podcast is Respect the Craft, I'm sure there'll be a whole thing about respect, about arts and crafts. Anything you can think about, we'll start trending. It's great. I mean, if nothing else, it gets more listeners, more viewers, right?
Hey, there you go. That's what you want, especially in this realm here that we're in. But no, those definitely sound like some great movies. The one about overthinking though and trying to rehearse all those formats, it makes me think, yeah, this is what we do when we're preparing for episodes like this, because you just start to think, hey, if I ask him this, what if he now goes here and then this could go here? Yeah. So if you ever want to see The Podcaster's Mind, just watch that show.
Absolutely.
A lot that goes into this.
Absolutely. With that said, again, thank you for joining, Ray. And I want to give you an opportunity to tell the world, who is Ray Sanchez?
Do we have a whole day here?
We're gonna do a 17-parter, so you can go ahead.
Perfect, that works. But no, I am, like everyone, a wrestling fan, lifelong wrestling fan. I always say I can remember at least from the age of 3. I feel like it's longer just because I feel like there's more time of me knowing wrestling than I've had so far. But just wrestling fan that really grew up always saying, I want to be a part of this. I want to be a part of this. Then one day, luckily getting the opportunity to be around independent wrestling, getting to be a part of training, and then finding about this lovely thing here called podcasting and deciding, while also somehow being in the business, also wanting to give my opinions on it, give my takes on it, and finding that nice in between. And then still just finding that love for it, because I feel like for me, that's why I had to call it Respect the Craft. I'm someone that has respect for this art form we do here, and I wanted to make sure it has that nice balance. And just my goal's always been, and always will be, and we'll talk about it on here, is just leaving the business better than I found it. So
awesome. I mean, it's a great attitude to have, and obviously a lot to unpack there. So we'll get to most of that. I mean, obviously, let's taking a step back in terms of podcasting, right? So we're both podcasters. You've been doing it a few more years than I have. I've been doing this for almost a year at this point. You've got about 7 or 8 years, give or take. I don't know how old you are. I'm 47, and so just being perfectly transparent, podcasting was obviously not something that existed when I was growing up. I grew up in Edison, New Jersey. I listened to the radio. Eventually went to Rutgers College, and near the end of my Rutgers College time, I was on the Rutgers radio station. So for me, I would say that was like my first experience in terms of like getting my voice out there, trying to send a message and trying to have some fun. Like for me, unfortunately, this was like 99, 2000. And I was probably listening to a little bit too much of Howard Stern and Opie and Anthony. So I was probably looking for trouble and being too much of a jerk, more than I really should have been at the time. And then from there, obviously over the years, I listened to a lot of podcasts. I mean, I've always said over this that my podcast, I kind of see it as a combination of like my inspirations. So like Colt Cabana's The Art of Wrestling was one of my first big podcasts that I listened to. And more recently, I would say the two that I listen to the most are the Daniel Tosh podcast, which I think is, this podcast is almost like literally a ripoff of it, where like he would go on and just kind of like interview like random people that like aren't famous. Like he'd interview like his wife's gynecologist, like things like that, like random folks that like they weren't being interviewed or having a conversation about it. Like the average person wouldn't know about it, right? Like usually when you hear about a Daniel Tosh, you would think, oh, he's interviewing Conan O'Brien or this guy or someone, some name, right? Because Tosh is a big name. But he interviews kind of people who are under the radar. And the third, I would say, is the Major Wrestling Figure podcast is my third inspiration, where I would say like between the three of them, I kind of have like my guest selection is probably more like Tosh. I would say the way that I format it a little bit is kind of like Colt Cabana, but then my overall kind of like more recently in terms of like how to kind of go with it and kind of topics to get into, a lot of it is like the Major Wrestling. So it's kind of like if those three podcasts married together in some weird shape or form or whatever, like that's kind of what I am. And again, obviously with a no-namer like myself, if you rank the three of them plus me, I'm number 4. But the key is make the most of it, try to learn from it, and just have fun with it, So with that said, I actually, obviously just unpacked a lot there for myself. Can you take me through kind of like your early stages in terms of like how you kind of got interested in communication of certain kinds and kind of like what inspired you at some point to say, you know what, I think I'd like to try a podcast?
Okay, so it legit became because of finding independent wrestling, finding that love for it. I made friends. I was always someone that's like, hey, especially finding people that enjoyed this was almost uncommon at a time because I'm 26. Okay. So at the time I was loving wrestling, was that awkward stage of, did people really like it? Was this still big? It was that mix. So I'm coming into indie wrestling around 2014, 2015 in the tri-state area. It was the big boom again of indie wrestling. So luckily finding some good friends that are now fellow even wrestling heads, like shout out to Isaac Rodriguez, who runs Arrival. He was hosting a podcast at the time called the Heel Turn Wrestling Podcast. And as a joke, they're like, hey, come talk about the first show you just went to. You went to, it was House of Glory's Civil War.
Okay.
So it had like Amazing Red on the card, John Morrison, PJ Black, aka Justin Gabriel, guys like that. Come talk about it. Just give your experience. And I'm like, I don't really like to be on camera. At the time, I was very just like I'm at 17 at the time.
Gotcha.
And I'm like, I don't know. Like, they're like, no, come on. It's fun. It's just like radio style. I'm like, okay, should be easy enough. Because at the time, again, I'd listened to some podcasts. I was a fan of the radio just because it was always playing. And I'm like, you know what? Why not? And finding that and just having fun with it. And that became my thing that I was like, oh, this is just like friends talking. And that's even to now, that's how I try to tell people when they come on to the podcast, let's just have a conversation.
Yep.
To me, it's never like, oh, let's overly plan it. Unless, yes, I've had some bigger guests at the time. That's like, for those, you have to format it a bit. Like when you're talking to, and you have a restricted time, like with Joe Hendry, okay, now I have to plan out this question. So we're good. Right. But if it's just, again, me and again, a good friend of mine, let's say someone that I'm working with at a Titan show or Shadow show like this weekend, hey, let's just have a conversation and have fun with it.
Of course.
And that's where that, for me, it was like, okay, so this is something I can get used to. And it just became for a while, let's keep going. And I became a reoccurring guest for them until at a point I started training to be a wrestler at House of Glory. So I was like, well, unfortunately, that had to end one of the two. Because either you could commit to one or you could commit to the other. Because as those that might be listening and might be interested in becoming a wrestler, it's a lot of work. As well as also managing graduating high school at the time, because I was still a senior. So it's like, yep, I had to pick. One of them had to go. And unfortunately, podcasting was that one that for me was the easiest to get out at the time.
Got it. So that's pretty great in terms of like your story, in terms of your journey and how you got there. Let me ask you this, because like for me, like my journey was kind of, so again, I listened to podcasts forever and I never really thought that I would do a podcast. Yeah. I've told the story multiple times in this podcast before, where basically it was, I think, April or May of last year. So like April-ish of 2024. And I was a guest on the Major World Order podcast. They were like, hey, I'd met Billy Peck at one of the WrestleCon events in Philly that year. And he was like, hey, we're doing the podcast. I was like, absolutely, let's try it. Right. I'd never done it before and I never had really any interest in it. Like from a public speaking perspective, like I do a lot of talking and presenting at work, but I never thought about like, hey, using, getting my own platform, let's say, and kind of putting things out there. I was on the podcast. I had a lot of fun. It was really, really cool. And my manager now, Gina, at work was like, hey, you sounded really great on the podcast. You ever consider doing your own podcast? And I'm like, no, I don't think so. I mean, I don't have time for that. I don't think I ever would, blah, blah, blah. And she said it multiple times. So eventually I was like, maybe I should give it a shot. So it was like May of last year that I basically said, okay, I'm giving myself a year and a half to start a podcast. So May of 2024, I said, by December of 25, I'm going to do a podcast. Now, much like everything else in my life, I planned everything out. I said, okay, if I'm going to do a podcast, how does this work? Like I need to know multiple things, right? Literally, how do you record a podcast, right? So there's the technology behind it. There's the microphone, the headsets, there's the software. There's the, how do you market it? How do you socialize it? How do you get guests? Like, what is the podcast, right? So, it's not going to be a weekly of me going up here and just complaining about, I don't know, green peppers are more expensive than they were last week. Like, it's got to be, I have to have something that's interesting that people are going to listen to and people will be very curious about, in general.
Nowadays, it might be an interesting topic because it looks like every week something is more expensive than last. So there might be a market for it now. You never know. Look at that. That's going to be more data you're going to get by the next week after this podcast is released. You're going to get, hey, you're now in the produce section of podcasts.
That's right. I'm the top inflationary podcast in the Northeast at this point. So you never know, right? So with that said, it was more along the lines of like, okay, I need a topic or something that's interesting. So, so I was going through it. I reached out to the guys, the Major World Order, because I was on their podcast. I was like, hey guys, how does this work? Right? Like, do I just use like, on my iPhone, do I just put on movies? Like, how do I record this? Do I FaceTime? Like, how does this legitimately work? And so Andrew Husvar and Billy Peck were fantastic in terms of walking me through what kind of microphone, using StreamYard, which is what I use. I think you use that as well. Yep. And just understanding legitimately how that works. So then about 2 weeks later, I went to Japan with my family for vacation. And as people probably know, I'm not a good traveler. I'm not a good sleeper. I'm not a good flyer. So with all the time that I had to myself, I was just making notes. And I was like, okay, I'm doing a podcast. What do I call it? Okay. What do I call it? What topics could we do? So I had like a list, like a mile long of whatever. And then I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, who would want to be on the podcast? Because I'm not sure. I mean, your world with wrestlers are probably a little more open to it. But for me, we're more civilians, right? So for the most part, people I work with and friends that I have, some are open to public speaking. Some want to be a little more, stealth. Some don't want to do that, right? I've had lots of friends and lots of people I used to work with. And I was like, hey, I have a podcast. I'd like to talk to you. And like, I have no interest in getting on a podcast. I'm like, great. I respect that. Because I found that if you want to try to push someone to be on and they're not comfortable with it, they're not going to put out a good performance or they're going to no-show it. So it wasn't something I was looking for,
Yeah, it's so it's the difficult thing of, especially because it's funny because you would think in the wrestling world, it's a lot easier because usually talking is part of this.
Right.
And this is something where I've even encouraged now younger wrestlers, hey, if you want to work on your public speaking, come do the podcast. And I've recommended for a lot of them, hey, when you want to do your first interview and first get out there, come do mine. Like, I'll make sure you get the right steps in, because this is also, as much as it seems as easy to do it, it is very difficult to do public speaking. Like I said, for the first few years, I didn't want to be on camera.
Right.
So it's like even the next podcast I did after, which I ended up doing with another friend, a group of friends, was the General Mission Wrestling podcast.
Okay.
And that was also only audio.
Right.
And that was another one that it's like, as we started transitioning and learning about, there's now this format and this format, and having to get used to being on a camera, I was still very just like, I don't want to be on camera.
Right.
And there's still that for a lot of people. Even now, it's like we're in an age where these things basically control us at this point, that it's like we're on camera most of the time.
Oh, absolutely.
But so many people still are worried by that. So it's one of those where you have to find, hey, giving that option of, hey, if you want to do it, cool. If not, there's a lot more people that are always like, oh yeah, I want to talk. Let's do it.
Yeah, it's funny to that point. I'll get further into my podcasting, I guess, my story, whatever. But I was going to bring up, so back in January, you and I were both at the PWJ show, and in working with Gilbert Rodriguez, shout out to Gilbert, had a great time. And I sponsored the show. And part of my sponsorship was I was able to record a live podcast before the show went on the air. So for me, it was fantastic because I'm obviously still learning. It's still early in my podcast career, but I had access to so many different people. So from a selfish perspective, I sat there and I recorded with 17 different people over the course of 5 hours, which was amazing. It was exhausting. But I mean, the access that I had and the people that I talked to were fantastic. Now, on the flip side, what I'll say is this too. I got to talk to a lot of people who I don't think are very experienced when it comes to podcasting. So here's an example. Zeta Steel. Zeta Steel is fantastic. She's the future. Like, she will be on NXT and Raw or SmackDown within the next 3 years. Like, no
Agreed.
doubt. Probably sooner than that with the way Evolve's going. With that said, I remember as soon as I talked to her briefly, we got behind the table, started talking. She puts the headset on and she goes, I've never worn one of these before, which to me was interesting. I mean, granted, she's 22 years old, so she's 3 years in the business, right? So she's still learning. She hasn't experienced everything, that you would experience yet or whatever. Like, she hasn't done, like Randy Orton's, I'm sure, done 1,000 radio interviews, and he's used to this kind of stuff, right? But Zeta's still new in it, right? Yep. So for me, it was interesting the fact that, like, we sat down and her first words were, I've never worn this kind of a headset before. And it wasn't like, hey, it's a Turtle Beach headset. It was like, legitimately, I got the sense that she's never done that format before. So for me, it was interesting to kind of see and, like, watch the evolution. And I'm really curious to see, like, when I'm back and she's back again in July at the next PWJ show, July 29th, is it?
So there's going to be July 27th, actually.
July 27th, yes. July 27th, PWJ2. She'll be there again. I'm sponsoring her match again this time, her against Penelope Ford, which should be an awesome match. So if I can get her to sit down again to kind of understand and see, since she's been pseudo-signed or whatever you want to call it for the last 7 months, and she's been everywhere. So to kind of see the development between where she was in January versus where she is now, and just kind of see how much progress took place over that time, and see, like, what are her first words when we sit down and start talking again. It's not going to be, hey, I've never done this before. It's going to be, I'm sure she's experienced a lot. She's seen a lot. I'm sure she's done some time in NXT, probably behind the scenes training or whatever, to kind of see, like, hey, what does the NXTization of it look like when you talk to someone like that versus 7 months ago? You know what I mean?
No, definitely. And again, you can even, by then you'll see, like, at this point, she's done multiple interviews and multiple just different experiences. So it's going to be a whole different conversation. And that's also one of the things that I love about doing this, that I've had a lot of people's first interviews, but I've also then been able to have another. Because now, as of this recording, I'm on 367 episodes.
Which, by the way, I'm amazed at how many you do. Like, for me, I do one a week maybe. Like, I took a month or two off at some point. So I'm a year in, and I've got like 45. Like, I looked at your number, it said 300 something. I was like, what's he been doing this for like 10 years? And I saw it was like January of 22. I was like, the math's not mathing. Like, what is going on?
No. So I'll even explain that. Like,
yeah.
I now, because of starting Respect, which we're going to talk about a little bit later,
yes.
I've taken a little bit of a backtrack of it, because there was a point, especially when I'm closer with certain companies, I would do full weeks of, hey, how many talents? Okay, we're doing this match, that match. Cool. So let's do this day, this time. And they're all live. Like, these are live episodes that I'm doing. Unfortunately, due to certain social media aspects, some of the episodes are lost, at least on the Facebook end, but YouTube, it's all there. Everything is there. So you could see, like, oh, there's a lot of episodes that are like same days or same weeks. So I tried to get as many people on. With that being said, if I could do it again, would I? Probably. But if you're like we talked about earlier, if you're overthinking a lot of this,
yes,
a lot of overthinking, and try to plan out a whole week and be sane by the end of it. But hey, it's always a fun conversation getting to promote these companies like a PWJ, and even get to talk to, again, amazing talent like that. Even that day when we spoke for a little bit and getting to talk to you, it's one of those where it's such a different realm to do it in, to just be like, hey, we're at a show and let's see how this goes. Again, it gives you those moments of, you get gold at moments like that too, because it's just, hey, genuine conversations. Because a lot of these guys are like, cool, hey, I got to go prep for my match, but sure, let's have a little conversation first. And you get their genuine reaction of what they're thinking in the moment,
Absolutely. So with that said, with that said, as you said, you can do multiple in a week. You could do one in a week. Like, what's your sweet spot? Like, for me, I've kind of looked at it and said, okay, generally what I try to do is I try to drop at 5 a.m. every Monday morning. Okay. Strategically, my thought is, I work in a corporate office, right? So for me, I commute 2 or 3 times a week. And so by dropping at 5 a.m. on Monday, it gives myself or people like me the opportunity to listen to it at least once at some point during the commute to or from the office.
Gotcha.
The first week or two, I think I dropped a Monday and then a Wednesday. And I was like, I'm trying to get like my listeners into a routine of sorts. So that way they know, okay, every Monday I wake up and it's there. Like, for you, it sounds like, is it more along the lines of when you can get a guest, you just drop it at that point? Or do you have like a vision of when it should?
So my thing has become, because I also studied marketing, like I was very big into marketing, looking at the hours, what hits, what times, all that. So when it came to planning episodes, I always tried to hit the sweet spot of programming. Okay, we're going to set hours. It has to be after 5 p.m.
Right.
Because I always looked at it as people coming back from work are able to watch, or people already are home at that point. So now they're able to watch, especially if it's live. When I did pre-recorded episodes, I would usually try to drop them anywhere from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. was that sweet spot for me. And then my usual marketing hours would be 9 a.m., noon, 3 p.m., 5 p.m., 7 p.m., and then till around, you have a good time till like 10 p.m. And I always tried to do that even now with the live episodes. If I do it, let's say at 7, cool. We'll do the episode. It's live, boom. And then I'll promote it again, saying thank you to the person at around 9 p.m., 10 p.m., around there.
Gotcha.
And that to me was always that sweet spot on timing. And then there's also, like I said, those weeks where I'm doing probably a 5 p.m. episode, then maybe a 6 p.m. and then a 7. Right. Sometimes I used to do 6, 7, 8, and it would be like that. So that would also vary the hours, because you also don't want to clutter with social media posts too much as well, because I've seen that done. Yeah, and yes, you'll get a few likes here and there, but to keep the retention which you want as a podcast, not that many people want to watch that much content at the same time.
Makes sense. From I guess a social media and like a marketing perspective, like I found, so initially what I would do is when the episode drops, I will post on Instagram and I'll post on Facebook. Yep. This way my file, and both my personal and this podcast Instagram as well as Facebook, and then add a story eventually. And then throughout the week, I'll try to drop some fresh content. More recently, I've started doing some more, I guess, creative stuff, whatever. So like, for example, when an episode's going to drop, what I'll try to do is create a couple of reels the week before and create teasers to go into stories. So a few weeks ago, when I was recording with Marcus and Daniel about their week in WrestleMania in Vegas, there was a point at the end of the podcast where like we're all laughing hysterically because of a story that was told. So I clipped just the laughing part and basically posted it and said, hey, want to know why these guys are laughing? Check out episode 41 and you'll find out. Like that's something like that, right? So I posted it to Instagram, posted it to TikTok. It's done pretty well. Like I found that since I, let's say, switched over my personal TikTok to the TikTok for the show, I've gotten some pretty good engagement, pretty good interactions, likes, comments, whatever else like that. So at this point, I'm just playing with different things, see what gains traction, stuff like that, you know?
As you need to, because it's the thing of, as much as, again, I've studied marketing and studied how it works and all the flows, it's ever changing. Yes. And it's always going to be like that, especially depending on what genre you're doing and what you're trying to hit. With wrestling, it's always ever changing. Because 1 minute social media metrics loves us, and the next minute, we don't deem wrestling that hot anymore, or this is too graphic, or this is too violent. So that's always ever changing of how they decide to push us. And then it's also, hashtags are always going to be a thing that you have to work around. Is hashtags a good thing today? Is it not? And always seeing how that works. So with TikTok, I've had my hit or miss now because of these announcement videos I've been dropping. Those have done amazing. People love seeing that, just because it's that movie trailer that catches the eye. That's like, oh, I want to see, what is this about? Oh, this person's coming. Cool. That's interesting to see. Or, oh, this match is happening. Okay, now. And when it came to the podcast clips, I would always make sure to create almost a graphic that looks like a match for certain things. So even if it's just, they're talking about this experience, having the graphic look a certain way that it's like it catches your eye and now you want to see it.
Absolutely. And what I found also with my episodes is, because, again, as I said before, I'm a huge data geek. So and I post it to Spotify and then it kind of syndicates outward. Like in Spotify, I can see like what countries are listening. I can see what days, which episodes, stuff like that. Like I'm always as mesmerized by like what episodes have reached. Like there's a few episodes that I thought I dropped and I was like, this is going to be great, and didn't get much in the way of listens. And I have some that like I was like, okay, it was fine, but it does really, really well. What I found looking at like all my podcast episodes, there's a couple of things that can definitely drive, let's say, listens and streams and stuff like that. If I have a guest who has a strong social media presence, right? If you have a guest who, after you post about it, like they're posting about it. Like I had one, Jason, former manager of mine, who we're talking about taking a chance on other people. This was probably about like 2 months ago or so, probably like late March or so. I posted to LinkedIn because what I'll do is anytime that I talk to somebody who I either work with or have worked with, I'll put it to LinkedIn as well on top of everything else. Gotcha. So I posted it and then he reposted it and basically said, hey, blah, blah, blah. It's a great conversation. And he's pretty big and pretty important in the business world. So a lot of his colleagues listen to it. So I got a lot of reach that way. Nice. Sometimes just a topic just kind of clicks. Like another episode that I had was about immigrating to the United States. I mean, it's one of those things where, especially with, let's say, without getting too deep into it, the political climate and immigrating, it was something that I think probably just kind of like, it had drawing power. People were like, I'd like to know about her experience, because Lithia, a friend of mine, is from South America. She immigrated here like 20 years ago. So hearing about how she, came here with a husband, they split up, she has kids, and kind of like how it impacted all of those, because it's like a personal human story, stuff like that, right?
That always is going to drive as well, because it's a very relatable subject,
Yes.
especially in the current climate we're in. And yeah, it's definitely one of those where people want to hear, because it can also relate, but also it gives a nice story and gives that moment of like, oh, okay.
Absolutely. And then another one I'll just call out too is a few weeks ago, I had my friend Jamie on, and we talked about the Netflix show Love is Blind, right? So it's one of those things where I'm guessing, maybe people found the show because they listened to the show, but maybe people did a random search for Love is Blind, found it, and was like, hey, I wonder what they have to talk about, and kind of went from there. So you never know what's going to click. Like you said before, it's random trends, some things are niche. You never know what's going to gravitate. It just happens, right?
Yeah, it definitely can be. And again, for me, it's one of those where some episodes I'm thinking, oh, this guest, it's going to be because of that, especially in the wrestling world. Sometimes, oh, the reach is going to be it. And it's like, cool, I have this person on, and I'm like, oh, that's going to do well. And then you look at the numbers and it's like, that could have been better. And then it's some that you just didn't expect, that it's like, oh, okay. Like a shout out to amazing guest that I had on was Santana Jackson. And you would think the metrics is going to be, oh, it's because of wrestling. Nope. A lot of it was the music field, because of, again, being a Michael Jackson impersonator as well and doing his performances. That just drew that I'm like, oh, okay, so that did amazing. And then there's some that it's like, okay, this made sense, this works. And then there's some that you're like, oh, this should do amazing. And that's like, back to the drawing board.
You never know. Yeah.
It's always ever changing.
Yeah, and to your point, I mean, Santana Jackson obviously has a huge following from his Las Vegas show. And also, obviously, his professional wrestling and such like that. So it's one of those things where, like, it just clicks, people make sense. And I mean, Michael Jackson, obviously, he's a Michael Jackson impersonator who's also a wrestler. So it's one of those like evergreen things where there's always an interest in it,
Definitely so.
Super helpful. Anything else you'd like to talk about in terms of your podcast experience? Again, I know you'd said, obviously, you've had a podcast for a number of years now. You've got over 300 episodes in your current one. Anything else you'd like to get into?
So I'll even get into that. The reason why I even said that, it's like, when you look at it, it's like, but there's almost a gap where I just said, oh yeah, it's been like 7 years, but then Respect the Craft itself, it's been maybe give or take 3 or 4 years now. So during that time, like I said, I wanted to start training into wrestling, and I got more focused into being in the business. So with that being said, I took a very long hiatus of doing anything. And then while I was in the business, there were still those moments of different changes, of being a student to being someone in the backstage area to being a marketing agent for certain companies, helping with social media. And then unfortunately, 2020 happened, and we all know where that goes. Instead of saying what happened, I don't want to drive that, because that also changes your metrics. So I don't want to do that. Again, this is for anyone watching Podcasting 101. Make sure you don't say certain keywords, because that also changes everything.
True.
So when that happened, I wanted an outlet again, because unfortunately shows weren't happening, and I just wanted to talk about wrestling again. And the idea of a podcast became of, I used to have a gimmick name. I used to be called the Law Ray Ramundo at one point. That's right. If you heard, like, Shane Fair called me Ray the Law this weekend.
Yes.
Because we've known each other for that long that he remembers I was called that. So it's like, okay, I started doing a podcast called The Laws Roundtable. And it would become a thing of, I didn't want to talk about wrestling. It'd be like, just like the podcast, how this is, that it's like, let's just talk about you and talk about things you want to talk about. And this was one of my, I wouldn't say regrets, but it's like, I would love to redo the episode now that I am more wrestling focused in a sense. I had Jimmy Jacobs on, who was an amazing mind for wrestling, amazing person. And I had him on, but we talked about everything but wrestling. And one topic we did discuss wrestling wise, I just wanted to talk about the moment he did with just the moment of having Jay Briscoe just backwards on himself and just bleeding
At Ring of Honor, right?
Yeah. I wanted to talk about that, because I'm just like, that's a moment that just sticks with me.
Yes.
And getting to talk to him about that. And then we're just talking about mindsets and all that. And I'm like, it's an amazing episode. It's still on the YouTube channel. Unfortunately, all the social for that, I kind of took off just because I wanted to rebrand. Because I'm like, okay, now that I'm back, once everything started clicking again, cool, we're getting back into wrestling. But then it's like, I want to be able to do both somehow. Right. I'm still in the business again. I'm still doing marketing and helping out with companies and doing their thing. Like, there should be a way I can do both. And then the idea of doing Respect the Craft became a thing, because I wanted it to be where, because let's get into this for a little bit if you don't mind.
Of course.
But when it comes to especially a wrestling podcast, there's a very negative connotation because of when you talk about wrestling, a lot of times, a lot of people talk from the fan perspective and are very critical on things when they aren't in on what the things are.
Sure.
So they like to critique and like to be in. And this is why the term mark is used very heavily on wrestling podcasters, because they say things that, again, are very offensive because you're critiquing a craft and you're disrespecting a craft that you haven't partaked in. You don't know the inner workings.
Right.
And there's a lot of people that put their bodies on the line. As you saw this weekend, a lot of people are doing this and have trained for years to do this. So when they hear certain comments and certain takes, it becomes offensive. So I wanted to be able to do that in between of being in this, showing the respect, but also not breaking the fourth wall.
Of course.
And that became the journey. Having first episode I had on was with someone that also, again, was very keen on promoting the business with Frank from Future Legend. That whole brand has been, again, showcasing just so many different athletes and brands and things like that. And again, using that method to put over and make things better. And it just started from there and noticing how people love the idea. And throughout the years, it's grown into its own thing now where Respect the Craft, thanks to the podcast, it led me to opportunities where now, as you saw this weekend, I've gotten commentary gigs.
Which is amazing. Yeah.
This is something where I've learned to use the voice and use the cadence and find my cadence in this, where now I'm comfortable on camera. Like I've bought so many cameras by now and so much equipment that it's like learning, okay, so this is what I need to do the whole time. Because I can tell you even that before we move on, of learning from starting off on OBS and using this program and that program to finally you started off lucky. You got StreamYard already. Like shout out to StreamYard, because this amazing program right here lets us do all this that for years I was struggling of having to have OBS and a Skype account and this. I'll tell you this off the air of how dealing with certain wrestlers on OBS,
I'm sure,
was such a thing to have to explain. But nevertheless, doing this, it became such a just, again, trying to make things better and being able to help people and being able to promote. And again, 300 episodes later, every episode to me is still, it's just gets more special and special. Again, to hear these stories, I've gotten to be able to talk to people before their first matches, before their last matches,
right?
And just getting to have those moments of getting to hear people genuinely happy. That's what I love when I hear people that are truly into this and into what they're doing. Like when we've spoken, I could see that eagerness of really enjoying what you're doing. And that's what I always tell people, if you don't love what you're doing, this might be the end for you.
Yeah,
because
which I was going to say, absolutely 100% everything you just said there. So for me, like I said earlier, like I got into podcasting because someone said I was good at it and I figured I'd give it a shot and try it or whatever, right? But for me, like selfishly, there's a number of parts to it. So it's everybody's a story with Jeff Seltzer. So a lot of it is for me helping people to have a platform to kind of share their story and get it out there. I'd say selfishly for myself, though, a lot of it is about me trying to evolve myself. So I've talked about in previous episodes that like I am a natural introvert, but for the most part, like corporate America is maybe more of a hybrid where I kind of have to come out when I have to come out. So this has really made me a lot more comfortable in terms of speaking out, being more direct, talking to people, being on camera. I'd say even professionally, like I am more confident because like I've gotten 45 episodes in, I've got like 40 plus hours of experience, just like moderating and asking questions and hosting. So like when I'm in meetings or I'm project managing, like I know how to kind of like guide and direct conversations because this is what I do, right? And for fun. And I've said all along that like when this isn't fun anymore, I'm just going to stop. Like there's no reason to make it a chore. You know, it's a hobby. It's fun.
That's the best thing to do. And that's something where that also stopped Eastern endeavors was I got that feeling of like, this isn't fun anymore. There's burnout moments are happening. And that stopped that. That's why I kept, and anyone that knows me, like shout out to, again, I have my big mentors in this, one of them being someone you saw this weekend, Dr. Sleep, Anthony Gango. That is my mentor. That is my brother. That is someone that's seen me have those moments of burnout that I kept joking when with Respect the Craft, when it finally became a thing. Oh, I made it to episode 10. I already broke the record of the Laws Roundtable. Now we're at episode 100. That's when I finally had him on. Oh, we made it to 100. Okay. Now we're at episode 366. And I'm at a point now where I'm like, I don't see myself stopping because of how I've marketed it, that it's like, I've now become where I don't do it as often. So I don't get that burnout. And it's still fun. Like I planned for this week, one episode. And I'm fine with that. Like there was a point where I overthought it so much that it's like, oh no, I need to have multiple episodes a week. I need to do multiple episodes a day so I don't feel like I'm not doing anything.
Yes.
I will recommend this. Don't do that.
Right. No, it's not good.
Never feel like you need to do so much because yes, you might have the audience for it, but at the end of the day, don't burn yourself out because again, when it's not fun, it shows. And doing this the way you're doing it, it's perfect. That one a week, getting to have that stockpiled, it's amazing. With this, again, just have fun with it, man. That's the best piece of advice I can give anyone is have fun with this. And especially when you have just the world as your oyster, that there's so many options, there's so many things to talk about, and there's so many great people. Again, you saw this weekend, there was a locker room full of talent there that they all have stories. They all have just different ways of how they got to where they're at, where this craft leads them as well. That's why with Respect the Craft, I've always said for me, it was always the idea of I want to learn about people, just about what the craft means to them. And for so many people, they think, I mean, wrestling. I'm like, no, the craft to me, it's everything. The craft is, I love the idea of what is your art form? Is it wrestling? Is it music? Is it comedy? Is it just movies? Is it theater? Is it podcasting? The craft is so ever changing as well that's why I've had different guests. And sometimes I've gotten the question of, wait, I thought this was a wrestling podcast. Nope. Respect the Craft is whatever it can be.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I'll say is this, like, so for me, I mean, I've done this for about a year or so. Yeah. Like the opportunities I've gotten out of this podcast for me have just been like, bucket list things. So things that like, even without the podcast, like I would love to get into or try, but because the podcast, it kind of helps me get my foot in the door. So like I said before, January sponsoring the PWJ show. It's one of those things where like without a podcast, I wouldn't have an excuse to sit there for 5 hours and like watch them train in the ring before the show and talk to people, versus this gives me an excuse to say, hey, sure, I sponsored it and I paid money for it. But my buddy Daniel and I went and we were joking. We were like, look, even without the podcast, without recording, we would have paid what we paid just to sit there and just watch all this go down, just to kind of be a fly on the wall and learn about it. Same thing recently when the show that you're talking about, Ray, when I got to do commentary on a match. Like the fact that like, this is something where like, as a lifelong wrestling fan, like I never would have really gotten that opportunity unless I did this. And the only way to really do it is if you sponsor it. So I sponsored it on behalf of the podcast. But for me, I would have paid that money in honesty, even without sponsoring, just to do live commentary, because for me, it was like a bucket list thing, like things like that. For you, on the other hand, I mean, you have a podcast, which you've made a lot of connections with, you've done a lot of training with and such. But I wanted to get into the fact that you're now able to use your podcast that you've built a following from over the years to now promote and be a platform for a wrestling show that you're going to be putting on in late July. Would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, please. Definitely. Respect, like I said, Respect the Craft was always meant to be something where it's leaving the business better than I found it. And throughout the years, helping so many promotions from, again, being a student in the game, getting to train, getting to then be backstage and then learn about all aspects of the business. I've taken those almost close to a decade now of experience and decided, let's try my foot in this. Let's see what the business means to me. Let's show what the craft means to me and start my own promotion here, because that is what Respect is going to become. It started out as a joke of, I'm going to throw a show just for my birthday. That's it. Because July 19th is 2 days before my birthday. I was like, well, my birthday's a Monday this year. Let's do it on the Saturday before. And let's just throw a show, put some people on a card, and let's make some magic. Which then became, as we spoke about earlier, I overthought it too much, to the point of, well, now I kind of want to keep going because I have more ideas and more things. So Respect Wrestling is now official. It is a thing. We have the first show that will be July 19th, live from the Mecca that you were at this weekend.
Yes.
We have a stacked card for you guys. And then that begins this ride. Now, again, we have ideas for future events, some more things that are going to be in the works. I can talk about just for July. We already announced, as of this recording, our main event that's going to feature former AEW talent Bear Bronson in our main event. He'll be going head to head with Dr. Sleep, Anthony Gangone.
Nice.
We have Janai Kai, who you got to call this week. She'll be in action against Valentina Vasquez. We have a debuting match that we're calling Fight or Flight. We're going to have our own, it's going to be our variation of like a pure hybrid style wrestling division. And it's going to include Akira, who has been killing it currently in Japan. New York tri-state standout Anthony Gamble, the Cambodian Dragon Yo-Yo, and a few surprises in that one. We also have WWE ID talents like Jackson Drake. We have more that are going to be announced as we're getting closer. But again, it's going to be something where it's the start of just seeing how this journey has been for me and getting to learn so many things of the trade, learning so many just how this works. And I want to be able to put that knowledge to the test here. And again, hopefully make something better and hopefully be able to continue to show respect for the craft and be able to make a place for others to also be a part of and just not step on any toes. That's been my biggest thing with this. And to be able to have fellow podcasters like yourself come out and have a good time and enjoy. And to have fans just have another place that they get to watch some amazing wrestling in the Mecca, but also other places. Because we do have some goals of, we talked about it before we got to the event on Sunday. Who knows? Maybe an NYC show before the year ends. So we'll see what happens with that.
Very awesome. I mean, for me, I grew up without indie wrestling because indie wrestling wasn't, let's say, huge in this area in like the 90s or so.
Yeah.
But, you know, in the 2000s and more recently, whatever, there's indie wrestling all over the place. And for me, as just like a wrestling junkie, like I can't get enough of it. I mean, for the most part, as a fan, you're giving me opportunity to kind of see things. And, you know, nowadays you can watch it oftentimes on streaming or in person or different ways or whatever. Additionally, giving opportunities for the wrestlers to get another payday, right? So for the most part, the only way you're going to get better wrestlers and more wrestlers is to give more opportunity to earn money so they can train and make that their full-time job. Show sounds amazing. So did want to ask, is it available outside of, you know, being there in the Mecca? Is there any other way people can watch it?
So we are going to give an option. By the time this is out, we have already announced it by then. So it will be streamed live also on the Respect the Craft YouTube channel. Awesome. So if you've already been a subscriber and watched the podcast by the time of this recording, probably episode 400 by then, nice. You'll be able to see it there as well. We're going to be streaming the event there because I want to give that option as well, because we are, again, having people live there in the crowd. But also, hey, some people that unfortunately may not be able to make it, or maybe are not in the state currently. Hey, watch it on YouTube, get to experience. We have lovely commentators that are going to be a part of our media team. Sam Laterna, who has been part of companies like TNA, more recently Maple Leaf Pro. Also, my great friend Harry Turjanian, who's an amazing commentator, comedian, actor. He's been killing it, so it's going to be an amazing time to have him on commentary. Our ring announcer, Shane Fair, who you got to hear this weekend, will be our master of ceremonies, and we'll have so many other little things. We have the amazing team of GoPro is going to be our production, who they make this look like just pay-per-view quality. So again, even if you're watching from home, you're going to get the full immerse experience, and it's something that we're trying to make this truly a production and make it truly, again, having that respect for the craft here. So if you guys want to check that out, that's going to be youtube.com/respect the craft podcast for those that are trying to still buy tickets. tinyurl.com/respect25. The reason the 25 is there because, like I said, I thought this is going to be just once a year thing. So for the next event, we'll change up the link a little bit and make it a little more appropriate for multiple shows now. But for now, that's going to be your link. And again, tickets are going fast, especially by the time of this recording. As we get closer, tickets are going.
Awesome. So it sounds like on July 19th, Saturday, in New Jersey, there's one of two places you want to be. Yeah. Either Edison High School's 30th high school reunion, which will be my class reunion, which I probably won't go to, but that's one option, which is in New Brunswick, I believe. I'm sure it's a bar or something. Or to be at the Mecca in Ridgefield Park, New Jersey for the Respect the Craft's first show, which, again, sounds fantastic. I mean, you've got a number of big names on there. Sam Laterna in production. She's been everywhere. Bear Bronson, I think you said, who was Creator Pro trainee. He's been Wrestle Pro. He's been in AEW. I think he's going to be in GCW soon as well. So he's been all over the place. He's definitely making a name for himself, and people will see him everywhere and such like that. Lots of great things. Ray, you've been around the business from an indie perspective for years now, so I'm sure you're using all of the experience that you've learned from being around all the talent and all the producers and such to now applying it for your own, which, again, I mean, what greater reason is there to go and watch to see somebody who's kind of like, getting their first opportunity, right? Give Ray a chance, go to the first show, watch the first show. When he does a great job, go to the second show. If it's not your thing, that's fine. Maybe move on and do something else. But for the most part, of what I know about Ray and what I've seen about Ray and the people around Ray and his mentors and such like that, I have full confidence that it's going to be an amazing show. So definitely do what you can to be at the Mecca in Ridgefield Park. Ray, if you want to give the information again on how to get tickets.
Again, that's going to be at it's going to be tinyurl.com/respect25. If you also just want to get any information or you have questions, because we also are taking sponsorships as well, you can message me at the RTC Pod on Instagram and X. Also on my personal Facebook at Raymond Sanchez. Again, we have different packages for anyone that might want to be interested in such, just because, again, we're also trying to make this a full just family affair and networking affair, because it's one of those where, luckily, because of the experience that I do have and also being in the podcast field, I've made a lot of great connections. So it's one of those, if you're a podcaster, come on down, because you're going to meet a lot of great people that are going to be able to network, have a good time, and just share experiences, because it's going to be a fun time, good time. It's one of those where it's going to show what indie wrestling is about, just because you get to really immerse in a whole creative night.
Awesome. So again, unless you are of the Edison High School class of 95 graduating class, which was about 2-3 years before Ray was even born,
Yep.
You probably want to be in Ridgefield Park, New Jersey, and have a good time with this wrestling show. So with that said, Ray, anything else you want to plug or promote, or are you good for the week, I think?
That's going to be it. Again, thank you so much for having me. This was such a great conversation here. I hope, again, at least a little bit of the tips I gave you here help out as well. Keep doing your thing, man, because it's no small feat to be able to do this for close to a year, to be doing 45 episodes. And trust me, it's one of those where some days I can imagine it's the questioning of, why do we do this again?
Right.
But keep going, keep having fun with it, keep having those conversations, because trust me, at the end, it's one of those that you look back that it's like, this is why we do it.
Absolutely. Based on my trending, maybe I'll rebrand this as the Food Court Disney Music and, I don't know, Green Pepper podcast or something. We'll see what happens.
Whatever the metrics work, man. I just saw Lilo and Stitch, so Ohana. There you go. There's another metric for the Disney side of things.
Amazing. Disney music, Disney movies. With that said, thank you everyone for joining. As always, want to remind everybody the show can be found on Instagram at Everybody Has a Story Pod. My personal Instagram is at Seltzer77. TikTok is at Everybody Has a Story Pod. For all things Jeff Seltzer, you can always check out my boys Marcus and Daniel over at JeffSeltzer.com. Apparently, you can see Janai Kai over at JeffSeltzer.com now as well. So we'll see what happens there. If you want, I don't know, it was a joke from the commentary from last week. If you want to email the show directly, you can email the show at everybodyhasastorypod@gmail.com. We are on all podcast platforms. Please make sure to tell your friends, your families, and your family's friends where we are found on Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, Amazon, Pandora, pretty much anywhere you can find a podcast. Next few weeks, I'm still putting together the guest list. Definitely going to have a big 1-year anniversary show in a few weeks. Next week might be a recap show of the commentary experience that I had back in middle of May. So we'll see how that goes. I did get the footage. It's a fun match. Great match between Janai Kai, Diamond, and Notorious Mimi. And it was my first experience doing live commentary. So lots of fun there. With that said, have an amazing week, everybody. And we'll have more coming up. Take care, everybody.
Everybody has a story with Jeff Seltzer. Everybody has a story with Jeff Seltzer.